Arizona is famous for its deserts, towering cliffs, and endless open landscapes. But beyond the breathtaking scenery lies a darker side few people ever hear about. A night when thousands witnessed something no one could fully explain. A nuclear facility surrounded by unsettling threats. A serial killer who disappeared into everyday life for years. And abandoned structures that continue raising questions decades after they were left behind. Because some of America's most disturbing mysteries are hidden in the heart of Arizona. The night thousands looked up. On the evening of March 13th, 1997, something unusual appeared in the skies above Arizona. At first, only a handful of people noticed it. A few calls reached local police departments, describing a series of bright lights moving silently across the night sky. Witnesses believed they were watching an aircraft unlike anything they had ever seen. But as the object continued traveling south, more and more people began looking up. Within hours, thousands of residents across Arizona reported seeing the same phenomenon. Some described a massive V-shaped formation stretching across the sky. Others insisted they were looking at a single enormous object, carrying multiple lights along its underside. Nearly everyone agreed on one detail. It moved almost silently. Witnesses watched the lights glide above highways, neighborhoods, and mountain ranges, without producing the sound normally associated with large aircraft. Families walked outside their homes to observe it. Drivers stopped their vehicles along the road. Emergency call centers received reports from people across the state describing the same incredible sight. Even trained pilots and former military personnel later claimed they had no simple explanation for what they witnessed that night. The event quickly became known as the Phoenix Lights. News stations across Arizona covered the story for days. Investigators interviewed witnesses while photographs and home videos spread across the country. Soon, one of the largest mass sighting events in American history had become an international mystery. Months later, military officials stated that at least part of the phenomenon could be explained by illumination flares dropped during a training exercise at a nearby military range. Those flares accounted for some of the lights seen later in the evening, but many witnesses rejected the explanation. They argued that the enormous V-shaped object had appeared long before the military exercise and behaved nothing like falling flares. Some estimated it stretched thousands of feet across the sky. Others claimed it blocked out stars as it passed overhead, suggesting they were observing a solid object rather than separate lights. To this day, investigators remain divided. Some believe multiple unrelated events occurred that night and were later combined into a single story. Others argue that witness testimony from across Arizona cannot be dismissed so easily. Whatever crossed the skies above Phoenix that evening, it became one of the most documented, unexplained aerial events in United States history. And perhaps the most unsettling part is that thousands of people, many of whom had never met each other, described remarkably similar experiences. But while the Phoenix Lights left behind questions that still divide investigators, another mystery in Arizona centered not on what people saw. It centered on what authorities feared might happen before they could stop it. The threats surrounding America's largest nuclear plant. Rising from the Arizona desert, far from the bright lights of Phoenix, sits the largest nuclear power plant in the United States. The Palo Verde nuclear generating station supplies electricity to millions of people across the Southwest. Its remote location was chosen deliberately. Surrounded by miles of open desert, the facility was designed with security and isolation in mind. But despite those precautions, Palo Verde has repeatedly become the focus of disturbing security investigations. In the years following the September 11th attacks, authorities dramatically increased protection around critical infrastructure across the country. Nuclear facilities immediately became some of the highest priority locations. Palo Verde was no exception. In 2004, federal investigators examined intelligence connected to possible threats involving major American infrastructure, including nuclear facilities in the Southwest. While officials emphasized that there was no confirmed plot against Palo Verde itself, the investigation highlighted how seriously authorities viewed even indirect threats involving the plant. Security around the facility remained extremely tight. Armed officers patrolled the perimeter. Surveillance systems monitored the surrounding desert 24 hours a day. Access to sensitive areas became heavily restricted, while emergency response plans were continuously updated to prepare for situations that officials hoped would never happen. For nearby residents, those precautions were reassuring. For others, they raised unsettling questions. Why would a power plant built in the middle of an empty desert require such extraordinary levels of protection? Former employees have often described the site as one of the most secure locations they had ever worked. Multiple security checkpoints, constant monitoring, and strict identification procedures made unauthorized access almost impossible. Yet over the years, isolated security incidents, trespassing attempts, and reports of suspicious activity near the surrounding desert occasionally appeared in local and federal investigations. Most were resolved without any danger to the public, but each reminder reinforced the same reality. Critical infrastructure remains a constant target for planning, surveillance, and potential threats, even when no attack ultimately occurs. The mystery surrounding Palo Verde is not about a disaster that happened. It is about the disasters investigators have spent decades trying to prevent. Because unlike many mysteries, success is measured by nothing happening at all. And perhaps that is why so much of the work surrounding places like Palo Verde remains invisible to the public. While security personnel quietly protected one of America's most important facilities, another threat was already moving through Phoenix unnoticed. A man who appeared completely ordinary. A man investigators would spend years trying to identify, before they finally discovered he had been hiding in plain sight all along. The killer who hid in plain sight. During the early 1990s, fear began spreading through neighborhoods in Phoenix after a series of brutal attacks along the city's canal system. The victims were young women. Many had been walking, exercising, or traveling alone when they were suddenly attacked without warning. The crimes appeared random, leaving investigators with very few clues and an entire city wondering who would be next. As the attacks continued, police formed specialized task forces and interviewed hundreds of potential witnesses. Despite the growing investigation, the killer remained invisible. Years passed. The murders became cold cases. Families waited for answers that never seemed to come. Eventually, many people feared the person responsible had either died, left Arizona, or would never be identified. Then, decades later, science changed everything. Advances in DNA technology allowed investigators to re-examine evidence collected from the original crime scenes. Biological samples that had once been impossible to analyze suddenly became powerful pieces of evidence. The new analysis pointed detectives toward a man named Brian Patrick Miller. To neighbors, he appeared completely ordinary. He lived a quiet life, held regular jobs, and gave little indication that investigators would one day accuse him of committing some of Phoenix's most disturbing crimes. In 2015, police arrested Miller after years of quietly building their case. For many families, it was the first major breakthrough in more than 20 years. The investigation revealed just how long someone could remain hidden despite leaving behind evidence at multiple crime scenes. It also demonstrated how dramatically forensic science had transformed criminal investigations. Cases once believed impossible to solve were suddenly reopened with renewed hope. The long search for answers finally reached a courtroom, where prosecutors presented evidence gathered over decades of investigation. For many people following the case, the arrest brought a sense of relief. But it also raised an unsettling question. How many other cold cases are still waiting for technology to uncover the truth? How many offenders have spent decades living ordinary lives while the families of their victims continue searching for answers? The story of Brian Patrick Miller became more than the investigation of one suspected killer. It became proof that time does not always erase the truth. Sometimes it simply waits for science to catch up. And while investigators eventually uncovered the man they believed was responsible for those attacks, another mystery in Arizona has never offered such clear answers. Just outside the city of Casa Grande stand a series of enormous concrete domes, abandoned before they were ever completed. Decades later, they remain one of the state's strangest landmarks, surrounded by questions, rumors, and a silence that only makes them more unsettling. The abandoned domes lost in the desert. Driving through the Arizona desert, there is a place that almost feels impossible to explain. Rising from the empty landscape are a series of enormous concrete domes. No surrounding neighborhood, no finished buildings, no signs of the thriving community they were supposed to become, just massive white structures standing alone beneath the desert sun. Today they are known as the Casa Grande Domes. Construction began in the early 1980s as part of an ambitious project to build a high-tech manufacturing facility using an innovative architectural design. The unusual dome-shaped structures were intended to house advanced production equipment and represent the future of industrial construction. But that future never arrived. Before the project could be completed, financial problems brought everything to a halt. The company behind the development collapsed, construction stopped, and the site was abandoned almost overnight. The workers left. The equipment disappeared. Only the unfinished domes remained. For decades, they stood untouched in the middle of the desert, slowly becoming one of Arizona's strangest landmarks. Nature gradually reclaimed the area. Wind carried sand across the empty foundations, while graffiti covered the once pristine concrete walls. Curious explorers, photographers, and urban adventurers began visiting the site, fascinated by the eerie silence surrounding the abandoned structures. Then the rumors started. Some visitors claimed they heard unexplained noises echoing through the hollow domes, despite nobody else being nearby. Others reported strange lights moving around the property after dark, or described an overwhelming feeling of being watched while walking between the empty buildings. There has never been credible evidence supporting those stories. Most can likely be explained by acoustics, wildlife, wind, or the psychological effect of exploring an isolated abandoned site. But the atmosphere of the domes continues fueling speculation. Standing beneath the massive concrete shells, every sound seems amplified. Even a gentle breeze can create echoes that travel through the curved structures in unexpected ways. As daylight fades, long shadows stretch across the abandoned complex, making the already empty landscape feel even more isolated. Perhaps that is the real mystery of Casa Grande. Not hidden experiments, not secret tunnels, not supernatural legends, but how a project once imagined as a symbol of the future became one of Arizona's most haunting abandoned places. A reminder that sometimes the most unsettling locations are not mysterious because of what happened there. They are mysterious because of what never happened at all. To us, Arizona is known for its breathtaking deserts and incredible landscapes, but beneath that beauty lies a history filled with unexplained events, dangerous investigations, abandoned places, and mysteries that continue raising questions to this day. Some have found answers, others may never be solved. If you enjoyed this video, subscribe and let me know which state I should investigate next, because across America, every state is hiding a story that refuses to be forgotten.